Hi, I'm going to go over some of the main points of Rome. You'll still have to read the text to get the other parts. So, beginning, there were some Punic Wars, and they lasted over a century. Rome fought 2 or 3 wars against Carthage. In the early Rome, kings were in charge, and they had a senate with the Senate. By 509, the king is overthrown. They established the Roman Republic as an oligarchy. An oligarchy is people who rule, people with money and power are in charge. The Roman Republic will last until 27 of the Common Era. Their political divisions based largely on class structure. It's an agricultural population. So landowners were the patricians. They were lifetime members of the Romans. The patricians is where we get the land, the word paternal. The Senate is aristocratic. They're powerful and they're in control. They make the lawmaking. They're conceived as fathers. The small farmers are plebeians. They're a member of the popular assembly. They have very little say in government. The matters They must pay due respect to patricians. I don't know what matters in this for. Rome conquers land outside of the peninsula, strains its political system. It's weakening the authority of the Senate, leading to a series of civil wars. It's very interesting if you have time or can take another class and learn more about this. It's incredibly interesting. Gaius Julius Caesar establishes a dictatorship in Rome in 46 before the Common Era. He does this because he's a great organizer, and he continues to be one. He codified the laws, just like Hammurabi in Mesopotamia. He regulated taxation. He reduced the debt. He began public work projects, which means he found people jobs. He granted citizenship to non-Latins, and he reformed the calendar. Now, he did many more than that. I can only tell you the basics. He abhorred the Republican institutions. He was assassinated in 44 before the Common Era by a group of senators led by Marcus Junius Brutus, and Cassius. So we go from republic to empire. There's an increase in economic and social conflicts between the patricians who were in control of the Senate. The rise of the equites, which is going to be a third party, they opposed the patricians. The small farmers were forced by the patricians, I shouldn't say plebeians, by the patricians to sell their farms. The small farmers were the plebeians, so don't use that. Civil war broke out. And all of this is going to come to an end when Octavian defeats Mark Antony and takes control of Rome. This is going to happen in the Battle of Actium, 30 before the Common Era. Octavian versus Mark Antony. Octavian comes into power. Rome becomes an empire. Octavian becomes the first emperor. And Octavian changes his name to Augustus. So this is Augustus Caesar. This is really interesting. So now you know how Augustus Caesar becomes Augustus Caesar. Octavian is Julius Caesar's nephew or something. I think he's his nephew or his adopted nephew. He was his nephew and he adopted him. I don't remember. And but he has that last name Caesar. And it's a very powerful name even today. The czars of Russia took the name Tsar because it reminded them of Caesar. And this Mark Antony and uh, Caesar, each of these men had an affair with Cleopatra. So this is the years of Cleopatra. So it's very interesting. Became a vast multi-ethnic empire. He was an emperor. There was a bureaucracy. There was a civil service. There was a Roman army. From Res Publica to Pax Romana, from 30 before the Common Era to 190 of the Common Era, Rome enjoyed a forced prosperity and peace with all parts of the world. I had to put forced in there because they did force people to follow them, to be under their control, but it did remain somewhat peaceful. Augustus tried to do away with the old unrefined reputation of Rome, like orgies and stuff. He restored family values. He was responsible for production of artistic and literary arts, i.e. sculptures, etc., and some writing, which I'll tell you in about a minute. He developed a system of law, police force, fire department, put an end to civil wars, and he had the first civic code. So he had some Augustan literature. He promoted Augustan worldviews, official public served state purposes. He wanted something wonderful written about Rome and the beginning of Rome. He already had the story of Romulus and Remus forming Rome, but he wanted something beautiful. He wanted something as beautiful as Homer's Odyssey. So he has Virgil write it. And Virgil writes the Aeneid. The tribute to Roman Augustus. It was a national epic of Rome. It's about human destiny and personal responsibility. Aeneas had to do what he was set out to do. And a lot of it does seem to rip off the Odyssey. But the issue is, again, they valued antiquity and they wanted to honor antiquity. So don't let anyone tell you they were just thieves. I hate when I hear that. Particularly, you get to a part in the Aeneid where they go to the underground. And that's really, really Virgil's major accomplishment. And it'll grow when Dante writes the um, his book, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So the other thing about the Aeneid is when Troy fell, I can show you this in the next picture. Hold on. Here's the Aeneid. They're giving you a mosaic showing you about the Aeneid. Anchises is dad. He's Aeneas's dad. Aeneas is going to be the hero of the Aeneid. Anchises, this is what they're saying in this picture. Aeneas is carrying his dad Anchises, and this is Aeneas's son. He says, Anchises, if you hadn't bragged about Venus, Aeneas wouldn't have to carry you. So this is their mom. So dad, Anchises, had an affair with Venus. Okay. And that's how they get a child. And mom's saying, if you hadn't done that, he wouldn't have to carry you. And she doesn't continue the journey. They're leaving Troy and they're going. And what's going to happen is Aeneas is going to establish the city of Rome with dad. And there's a whole journey. Here's another one. And he says, oh, Father, you are so heavy. And there are tons of art that shows this because they're honoring the founding of Rome through him. Here it is on a vase. And it's the whole thing. I wish we could read it, but we can't. It's wonderful. They went on a building spree. And these are all aqueducts. Aqueducts. This one doesn't look like one, but these are definitely aqueducts. This doesn't either. This is especially they carry water through the bridges because they have to move it into Rome. So most of these look like just bridges, but this is an aqueduct, and there are so many of them. And you'll read about them in your text. And they were great at that because they invented a kind of liquid concrete that they could use. They were great inventors. Whatever anyone says to you about the Romans, they were fantastic engineers and great inventors when what they needed. Because when you have such a gigantic empire, the need comes, and out of necessity comes invention. And they invent what they need. They created roads, and you'd think they just put these blocks down, but they didn't. They were very good at it. And if you see roads today, you see how intricate they are, and they just made them as good as they could, and everything they had, the ditches, things to hold everything up, the drainage, the typical road width. Here are some of the amphitheaters that they were already around for the Greeks, and they had their own. They put 4 of them together and they made the Colosseum, which you'll read about. I didn't put in here. Here's some of the ditches. This is actually a toilet. They had toilets. Share. This is all the way up to Bath, England, because they had control of most of Europe, and this was a Roman spa. And this was the heated pool. They had what they called a Frigidaire, which was the cold pool, and they had what was the name for mid thing? And we've heard it before, I can't remember, but one that was kind of not too cold, not too hot. And then they had the warm pool. And you would go there if you had the money and relax. And here's some of the sculptures where you would light it up with the oil. Very cool. And this, I'm not going to read all to you, but you can see we went to the royal with the kings, the Republican period, the Principate of Augustus, the death of Augustus, Diocletian. We don't get to go through all of these. We don't do the Byzantine period here, but you can see this is where we're at. It was very interesting. I wish we could do more, but there's some in your book, so make sure you read that. Roman portraiture is very cool. It's a bit different from Greece because Romans wanted a lot of detail. They wanted it to look just like that person, very realistic detail. They wanted the outer appearance to express the inner character. And it was propagandistic. You wanted images to show your ancestors. You wanted images to show what you wanted people to know, or what you, not necessarily true, but you wanted them to know certain things. It's architecture as a political medium, public buildings for the glory of leaders. We still have that. You can see these. This guy lost his chin. It's unfortunate. And all these guys are very important. I love her. Her hair is so big. Her head keeps breaking off. Roman aristocrat holding portrait busts of his ancestors. I'm related to these guys. Oh, I forgot the most important one. Is he in here? Let me see. Uh-oh. Let me see. Well, let me stop this for a minute and find what I want to show you. Okay, this is one of them. This is Augustus Caesar. This is called Augustus Primaporta. And he's standing there and he has armor on as though he's a soldier. And he has Cupid right here. And his father had an affair, or Aeneas's father had an affair with Venus, and they had a baby. So Venus's mom, Cupid is Venus's mom. So just by putting Cupid with him, he's trying to tie himself in with the gods. And that's very propagandistic. Isn't that cool?